Hey, listeners, thank you so much for joining us for the second season of Midlife at the Mailbox. Over 8 years ago, Denise and I met during a chance meeting at our neighborhood mailbox. Over the years, our friendship has blossomed into something bigger.
We can't wait to tell you all about it. And although we no longer share a mailbox, we really are closer than ever in real life. This meeting at the mailbox inspired a friendship, a business relationship, a lot of laughs, a couple tears, and now a podcast. So come along and listen in. We're so glad you're here.
Denise and I are very excited about today's guest, Stephanie German. Stephanie is the first author that we are interviewing on our podcast. In 2019, she wrote and published a best-selling business leadership book, So Your Boss Can't Lead. She is also an executive strategist with German Business Consulting and an adjunct professor at Fresno Pacific University. When Stephanie is not coaching clients on ways to have a more efficient business, she enjoys a nice glass of wine, hangs out with her family. She enjoys spending time with her friends. That's very, conducive to Denise and my life as well. She loves to go to the beach or to the mountains, and she can get lost in any book while her children are running around like, the crazy kids that they are, while she ignores them, enjoying her wine. A few years ago, she had a midlife career pivot, which came earlier than really the midlife, but she decided that life is too short, which I would always say is like a good motto, to do a job that she is unhappy with. And I can totally attest to that. And that was based on some life circumstances and having an understanding that life is short and time is a resource that we never get back. So she decided to pave her own way. And we're very, very excited, as I shared a little bit ago, to have Stephanie join us behind the mic. So Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
We're so excited. And Stephanie, it's even more exciting. We get to talk to you. I mean, Amy and Stephanie met through networking, right? How did you guys do that?
So we both chuckle because I stalked her in a way that I didn't mean to actually stalk her. So I had been approached by a company via LinkedIn when I set off to start A2, and it was a company that helps you really find lead sources through LinkedIn. Would you say that's correct, Stephanie? And
a process.
And helps you put together processes so basically you can set it and forget it. And after I got off the phone with the woman that was selling me, I was doing some research on this company. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to potentially invest money in this, I'd like to, connect with people that have used their services before. Well, unbeknownst to me, as I was researching the name of this company, I stumbled across a rather unfortunate review that Stephanie had posted on maybe their Facebook page.
Oh, yeah.
Basically being like, stop, reverse, do not do this. And so I reached out to her, and we have just kind of stayed in contact since then. And we talked about what she got herself into and how she was trying to get herself out of it. So I learned from her not to invest in this company in terms of my time and resource. I'm sorry that she was the guinea pig, but it brought us to where we are today with her being a guest on our show. So welcome.
And it's a funny story. I still laugh about it now. Even though I'm still trying to get everything rectified, that's okay. But Amy's not the only one I have saved from my very factual review of the company and what took place. So
that's awesome. I mean, that just goes to show the power of networking, really. I mean, Amy reached out to you proactively. You were in an online forum, right? Networking in a sense, right? And, unfortunately, you had a bad experience with this particular service. But I mean, I just share that because I thought it was such a great story that you took the time, Stephanie, to talk to Amy. And then,
we talked for a while. We got on the phone and we just which you'll see the three of us today. We could just like chat. But yes, Denise.
And I mean, and I remember you hung up and you called me and you're like, oh, I just learned about, all the pitfalls of that service. And I was like, yeah, I kind of had a feeling. And she's like, and the woman was from Fresno. And I was like, really? And she goes, yeah, look her up. Because Amy knows I'm from Fresno. We're neighbors. Listeners, just to remember, Amy and I were neighbors in Glenview. We lived like 5 townhouses down. We met each other at a mailbox, the namesake of this podcast. But to have a Fresno connection, which is kind of unique. And I mean, we know 1 or 2 people, we know like someone close to me in common, but I mean, it's so interesting that our past brought us here, right? And so anyway, so I find that I shared that because it's like a great networking story, but also probably, Stephanie, something about, the pitfalls or, the highs and the lows of having your own business, right? So, and I think, it mentioned in your bio that you're a problem solver, right? From an early age. And we can see that, right? In what you were sharing online, right? You're trying to solve a future problem, right? Or prevent those. So
yes.
We'd love for you to tell us your story and share how you got into business coaching or writing, and tell us a bit about your business, German business consulting.
Yeah. So, my husband jokes that he can't take me anywhere because we go somewhere, we're talking like a restaurant business, and like I just see the problems. It's like, where's Waldo? Except I don't have a problem finding Waldo. He's right there. And that might sound weird, and but the reality is I can go into a situation and just see how there can be small tweaks in what's happening to really make the customer experience better. Or the flip side of that is the employee experience better, right? Businesses, if you're not a solopreneur, you have employees, and there are ways to help keep them long term, because that digs into your profit. So we'll talk about more of that later. And I like to say that I kind of stumbled upon what I'm doing now. I was one of those kids that I really wasn't sure what I was going to do when I grew up. There are some people that are like, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be this and that. And I was like, I'm going to be something, right? It's just, I don't know. But, I just like looking at all the things I did. So I worked in the restaurant industry. Undergrad was in political science. So I worked at a lobbying firm in Washington, D.C. I worked for nonprofit, local government, and just really, saw the ins and outs of how businesses worked and supervised people, and just continued to see this disconnect. And I was like, why does this, not everywhere, but 90% of the places, why does it look like this? Does it have to look like this? What could be changed? And so I would always ask questions, which honestly, I joke, my daughter likes to ask questions all the time, and it's very tiring. But I'm like, she's me, because I ask my bosses questions all the time. And they were probably like, is she ever going to stop talking? But it was always to like improve systems, right? Like, could we do it better this way? Or have we thought about this? And, we've all heard we do it this way because we've always done it, because it's easy, it's comfortable, right? So along with just like processes, and I realized that individuals were being promoted into management leadership positions, and they didn't have an actual understanding of how to actually interact with people. Empathy is not a strong suit of mine, but I still have an understanding that everyone's different, and you have to figure out what motivates people and what their strengths are, because it's beneficial for them and then the company as a whole. And it's like these people in these leadership positions weren't seeing that, and it bothered me. But again, some instances I could say something, some I couldn't. But I went back to school and got my master's in organizational leadership with an emphasis in executive coaching and mentoring. And it was really during that time, and this is back in 2011, 12, that I realized, there are other ways that I can take my talents and my strengths and be fulfilled and help others. Really this idea of business consulting, business coaching, really, but then more into organizations like as a whole, right? It wasn't just leadership development. And so initially, though, that was really my passion. Is I'm like, let's change the world through leadership, good leadership. hence the book, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I soon found in conversations with business owners that everything in an organization is interconnected. We don't think of it that way, but a lot of times a business owner would say, hey, we're having this problem. It looks like this. Let's solve it. But that wasn't the thing to be solved. That was the symptom of a different issue. And so it wasn't just looking at maybe the productivity of the employee, but it was looking at the processes and the clarity around what the business entails. So, kind of just that's kind of how I ended up where I am. And I said, I'm just going to start my own business. Literally, that was I just said one day I was going to do it and did it.
That's awesome. Yeah, you just had that gusto and you went. I mean, you solved your problem, right? Which was like trying to figure out what to do about that. So that's right. That's awesome.
Well, I was going to say, like, I am 41 and I feel like I still don't know necessarily like what I want to do. Everything is always like evolving, but I think I had the same situation coming out of school or going into college, right? It was, Amy, everybody thinks that you'd make the greatest teacher. Your mom's a teacher. You love kids. This is what you should do. And I'm like, great, I'll go to school to become a teacher because I don't know what else I want to do. And thankfully I had a double major, education and communications, because guess what, guys? I never went on to become a teacher. I realized very soon that I did not want to spend my life in a classroom. But I do think that pieces of like what you are good for, not good for. I think that there are pieces of you that you excel at that I still utilize in my day-to-day, right? In coaching, in the training. So maybe I didn't become a teacher, but I still do teach in some capacity every day.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's all, that's constantly what we talk about too in career development, right? So, I mean, it's great to hear, Stephanie, that your process of how you did that, right? Because then that's what I wanted to share, because not everyone, comes to it at the same conclusion, right? But you were really trying to solve a problem that you were seeing out there, not only for potential clients, but yourself, right? You wanted something that was your own, sounds like, as well.
Yeah. And being a business owner is so much fun and so stressful.
Yes. In 2016, when I set out to start A2 Sales Marketing, I really figured that it would be easy. I've always been in like some sort of business development sales type of role, and selling Groupon or selling digital marketing solutions, or, whatever it was I was, plush toys always seemed fairly easy in terms of like moving the product, and finding a retailer or a small business or a builder, depending on the vertical that I was in. So I figured like, okay, when I set out to start A2, and it was because I saw a miss in the market of being able to support the operations as well as the marketing functions of small businesses. And that includes like the process development. And, I was a little overconfident, but my first years, I do feel like really came easily to me in terms of like, I had a longstanding client. I got hired by one of my clients, full time, but I really didn't put like the effort into, developing a book, right? A business or an email list or any of those things that I could go back to when times were tougher, or more tough. So looking for new clients, spending time building the processes around the growth of my business, I would say is something that I've struggled with as well. And I think it's often easier for me to find those misses in other people's businesses than it is in my own. Does that make sense?
Yes, because it's our own blind spots, right? It's easy to be on the outside looking in at the fishbowl, and
Correct.
See if someone else could do something better. But like taking the time on our own business, right? My mantra is work not just in your business, but on your business. And like
I always say that.
We have to do that also, right, to sustain our own businesses. And I always say if I'm not modeling and doing what I'm telling clients to do, then I have no business, telling them to do X, Y, and Z because I'm not doing it. Right. So yeah.
I saw you just posted about that this week, actually, on LinkedIn, Stephanie. Just that, right? Like, that self-awareness post, right? And if you're not self-aware, so yeah, that's really interesting. So guys, listen, she walks the walk and talks the talk on the social media too. So
yes. And I will say that, I'm very aware that my social needs some upping, but I feel like for me personally, I'm like drained by the time I get done with my clients and midlife and, helping other, that I'm like, I don't have the energy. So that's something that I'm working on with myself is saving some energy for me and my business and just me in general. But coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that we have kind of talked about or that we alluded to talking about earlier was groups weren't really meeting to network, right? So we've been, a couple years into hibernation mode and sitting behind the computer and not getting out and talking to people. And, that was how, we joke that that's how we met, right? In terms of that networking is when I was doing some research, and how we connect, which is very, very, very lucky, I will say. But I want to talk, I'm going to throw this to Denise and kind of chat about how your business has grown from networking. And then I think Denise and I can chat about what we've seen on our end and some of the things that we've started to do post-pandemic life with some networking as well.
Yeah, exactly. So Stephanie, tell us, I see you do a lot of networking and it's some of the things you talk about a lot in your posts. Like, how did you build your business through networking?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. Again, the world shut down essentially for 2 years. And I kind of relaunched my own business or reimagined it during COVID. And so it's, so my business is like 7 years old, but I also joke that it's really 2 years old because there was a shift, right? And for me, I'm really big on relationships. Like the odds of me getting a cold lead and getting a client that way, it's very little. But that's because it has happened, which I love those. And especially when it like all works out, you're like, this is the best client ever. But I know like with COVID, that's one of the reasons I was looking into this. How do I network on LinkedIn? What's a good process that feels good? Because I'm really big on integrity and I have core values for my business within my life. And if it doesn't fit with those core values, I won't do it. Right. So I hate like people sliding into my DMs. That feels really shady sometimes. I want to develop relationships with people and for them to see what I have to offer has value. And even if, like I said, even if no one works with me, like there's value that I want to provide to them. So really just, learning to make connections on LinkedIn for, again, whether it's for me or someone I know, I always let people know, hey, if I have a really, I say eclectic kind of network on LinkedIn. And so if there's ever any, I always tell a new connection, if there's someone you see that you'd like an introduction to, let me know. I'd be happy to connect you. But then also I'm a part of a couple different networking groups in town. And, as we came out of COVID and started meeting in person, but a referral group. And so
tell us a little bit more about that. Not everyone knows that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you can kind of share what a referral group is, I think that'd be fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what's funny is I didn't know what it was either. I had a friend and he was like, hey, I'm a part of a referral group. You should come to it. And then it's funny, he actually never like really invited me. He's a friend or CPA. I had someone else invite me to the to it. It's modeled after BNI, Business Networking International.
Yes, I've heard about that.
I've heard great things about that. I've never been a part of the BNI. like with that, you pay like $1,000 to be a part of it. And I just thought, I don't really want to pay $1,000 for potential, right? There's no like guarantee. So with this referral group, we meet once a week. It's an hour.
It's a big investment of time.
It is, but because some meet every other week, but it's about relationship, right?
Yeah.
I've been in relationships with these people for basically 2 years, year and a half. And it's one person per industry, right? So there's never going to be another business coach. We have one real estate agent that does residential. So we could have a commercial real estate agent. We have one insurance agent. We have one solar guy. We have one, right? One person per industry. So there's not competition. And the idea is to build up a referral army. So when I hear of someone that has a need, an insurance need, I can say, hey, here is Camellia. She's my agent. She actually is my agent now. She's incredible. She'll help you out, right? And it's getting their information to the person, and it's helping build everyone's business. Right. And it really is that idea of giving. You have to give before you get to gain in a lot of these situations, because you have to build the relationship. So, so yeah, that started off on Zoom, and then they'd been meeting though for 8 years, right? People cycle in and out. So we've been in person for about 1.5 years, 2 years now. And, but it's great because some of them are friends now. Yep. They're not just people I refer business to. I know about their kids. I know about their spouses. I know what vacations they're taking. Doesn't mean I'm friends with everyone in the group, but it's easy to want to get business for them, because
your referral group has become a community of sorts to you, which is awesome. And a community is a group of people that are going to support one another, and they're going to engage on your social posts, and they're going to cheerlead for you, and they're going to share, your posts or your emails, and they're going to be the ones that are, rubbing your back in the corner, ready to help. And I think there's also a level of trust, correct, that the people in your group have developed for one another. And that's really awesome. And I pivot that to your growth utilizing like LinkedIn specifically, because I see you a lot on LinkedIn, to continue to nurture that community with the information that you put out and the stories that you share. It's valuable information about business. It's not buy from me, right? That's where I think a lot of business owners get, or even, people that are out just promoting, is that it's about me. It's not about you. It's about what we could do together to help grow your business and support one another, which is awesome. And so I'm glad that you found that group.
So I heard the business offline, idea, opportunities and network. Offline networking is not dead, you guys. I mean, I think it's going to make a huge comeback, right? In terms of like the human is still relevant in the process, right? And I know there's been creative ways in the pandemic, but coming out of that, especially potentially in smaller markets like Fresno, right? I mean, what is it like, Stephanie, to start a business or to, grow a business in a smaller market? Amy and I coming from, larger markets like, Southern California, Los Angeles, Orange County. Amy's in Glenview, like, North Shore of Chicago, one of the largest, business networks in the world. So, but you're from Fresno, and I know a little bit about Fresno. So why don't you share some of those? I mean, this sounds like a referral group is one. I see you active in a lot of other organizations. Please share some of that for our listeners, like in case they're in a small market.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I was say networking, and I think you'd love this, is I am a board member for the Fresno County Women's Chamber of Commerce. And we do it's only in July and it's only for members, but it's speed networking. And it's so fun because it's literally like speed dating, where you just meet and you talk. I think it's 3 minutes. And the idea is, it's not like you speak for 1.5 minutes and you speak for 1.5 minutes. It's like, hey, engage in a conversation, learn about each other, and see if you want to engage more, right? And not even necessarily for like business purposes, but I've gained friends from that. And again, I, refer to them and all of that. But I think what's interesting, and it's kind of to go back to your question of like how do I find business in a smaller market? Well, one, I can do my business from anywhere. So that helps expand my market, right? But what's interesting about Fresno is there is a ton of industry here that people just don't know about. Because when we think of, like where, you grew up and where I kind of grew up, it's just the suburbs and off the 99 out, there's so much business that exists. Like here's a good, for instance, I had a client that, she is a custom jewelry maker. Okay. So years ago,
Good client to have.
Good client to have. Years ago, she worked for a, jewelry stores in town. I don't know if you remember Warner's at all. It was a big garden. She worked at Warner's. She always wanted to make sure people got a good deal. Well, she ended up 28 years ago starting her own jewelry business. And so I helped her put a lot of processes and like simple agreement into place. But prior to us working together, the reason she does what she does is because we have one of the largest jewelry manufacturers for the United States and Canada here in town.
Who knew? I did not.
Who knew? I mean, right? Who knew? I didn't know. And so us being a smaller town, though, word of mouth is huge.
Right.
Yeah. So networking, knowing, it really is kind of who you know. I mean, that's for a job, period, right? But I always believe, again, when I give back, I know I'm going to, sow what I reap what I sow. And so it's not necessarily because I think a lot of times our mindset is, oh my gosh, there's not a lot of potential clients here. How do I find them? There are so many people that need my help. They just don't know about me yet. Right.
Right.
How do I speak to their pain point in my social media posts on LinkedIn? I believe in the grunt test. I want someone to go on my website and for them to be like, yeah, I got to hire that person because she's speaking directly to my pain point.
You've read all my favorite books.
Oh, yes. Right? Because we're always thinking, right? People are selfish. Like even me, even though I like to give back, I'm still thinking what's in it for me, right? We just
of course, it's not a charity, right? At this point.
Right.
And I love what you were talking about earlier when you were talking about looking at industries, right? That are, even if you're not in a large market, or even if you are in a large market, really, what is your market known for, right? I mean, you kind of pulled out like a hidden piece that I wasn't aware of Fresno. I mean, I know there's a lot of jewelers, but I had no idea there was jewelry manufacturing, right? I mean, same thing with agriculture, right? Potentially, looking at different ways that the community, can profit, or, the growth areas in Fresno, right? Which would be potentially agriculture. And and they were, if you can't see us, Stephanie and Amy have read the same book. So, tell us about your brand, or what was the,
Bill, we're behind the scenes, and I think that we're going to start actually posting our videos to YouTube, but behind the scenes, Stephanie made the comment about the grunt test, which is a line from Donald Miller in the book, Building a Story Brand. Great read. Clarify your message so your customers will listen. And I do a lot of this with my clients. Did you do the training?
No,
you just read the book and you're like,
implemented it for myself.
Yeah.
For my clients. I'm not a marketer by any means. I mean, as far as like, I'm not going to go do someone's social media or ads or build a website or all that, but I definitely make sure in regards to like target market and right wording.
Pass the grunt test.
That's like, you got to dial that in to get leads,
Yeah.
No, I love that. Well, no, thanks for sharing your networking tips. I mean, that offline networking, it's still alive. I mean, it can be, so you do a mix of both online and offline, right? Mostly through LinkedIn, but sounds like through your Instagram, and then also through referral networks, and also, things like nonprofits, like chamber organizations. So that's awesome. I mean, job seekers can do that too. I often try to encourage people to look at these advocacy groups. You could just a wealth of information.
There's so many in your town, and
small markets are better for that, actually. I mean, to be honest, small markets are a little better for that, I think, than the bigger markets, just coming from a small town and knowing both. But yeah.
Yeah. And you really have to find what works for you, right? What works for me and my personality and how I function isn't going to be the same for someone else. And even there are a lot of different organizations. I mean, we have the Clovis Chamber and the Fresno Chamber and the Hispanic Chamber and the Black Metro Chamber, and I'm sure there's more, but that's what I can think of off the top of my head. And so it's really finding a place where you can belong, and then you keep showing up there. You keep showing your face. You can't show up one time
and expect that something is that a business is going to fall in your lap, or that you're going to, exactly. Yeah. I will say, so in earlier this month, so in December, I hosted my first webinar on little tips about Instagram. And my goal from that was to start a Instagram group, because what I noticed that one of the pains that I've seen in the small business space is that people want to utilize social media, but they just don't, business owners and just people in general just don't even know where to start, right? And as simple as different icons. And so I'm doing a group now. I maxed it at 6 people because which I can, if someone wants to chat about it offline, I can tell them more about the goal behind the 6. But the big piece was that when I went out, I actually went to a couple chamber events in December. I actually went to, in Glenview, there is a young professionals chamber, which I was really excited that even at 41, I could still attend, because it goes up to 48. I was like, yes. And then we did a business after hours, which I took my husband to a week later, and met a couple people and invited them. And so I have 3 people that are in my group that I had relationships with, and then 3 people that joined my 6-week webinar from this in-person networking. So, and that was after 2 times of just being able to stand there. Hey, my name's Amy, and this is what I do, and here's my story, and it's awesome. And I think one of the pieces about our topic. We're still coming up with a name. So, I was kind of going into our recording, the good, the bad, the ugly of growing your own business. But we talked about that strategic planning a little bit. And so I want to talk a little bit more about the process development that you chatted about a little bit earlier in our segment, because I think that that's a huge piece. Do you listen, I'm sorry, I cannot speak right this second. Did you read the book 4 Disciplines of Execution? Have you read that book? Are you a fan of?
Should I?
Of Covey? Okay,
no,
you should, because a lot of the things that you were saying early on about process development, and it also forms around goal planning, and it's finding those pieces that are he talks about, the wildly important goal. And so I use that with my clients now, is what is that one wildly important thing that in your business that you need to do to grow, right? And so it doesn't have to be tied to revenue, for example. It could be that there are some negative reviews about a particular business, and you want to work to change that. So what are you going to do every single day to move that, to
your
change
why.
that, your why, right? To change that lead.
Yeah.
So all of that, though, ties into the processes, because it is how your business then starts to function, correct? Would you say that I'm capturing that or I'm missing something? How would you?
No, absolutely. You need to know what, I think the first thing to recognize is that everyone needs to figure out what their definition of success is, right? And I mean, I literally had this conversation yesterday with a client. It's what is the goal for you? Is the goal to grow a business so you can do X, Y, and Z? Or is it to like make $1 million because that feels good to you, right? What is it that you want to accomplish in your business? They have to know that first. Because if they don't know where they're wanting to go, then they're not going to put in the work to get them there.
Do you find that your clients know that when you ask that, or do they have to take some self-reflection? And
so it usually ends up being like a homework. So, okay, so we've talked about this, you think this, okay, now you need to take the next week before we meet again, or before the next time we meet, and dream a little bit, right? Dream about what those goals are. I heard this the other day. Someone said it's more of a spiritual and business coach, but they had them close their eyes, get on a helicopter, go up and look over their business. And what is it like? Where do they see them going, and where do they see issues? And I thought, wow, like I've never used that before. I might now, but just incredible to help. Because again, we're doing all of the daily work, and you don't take time to see, okay, this is where the roadblock is. Like when you look down on something, you can see this is where we're hitting problems, and now we need to go fix it.
Right. Separating yourself from the business or the whatever that is, right?
Yeah. And I believe that our lives are so intertwined in our business, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have a large company. But you have to decide, is your goal to eventually be able to take a month off from your business and everything still run? Okay, if that's the goal, then we, typically have a lot of work to do. But it's like, what processes need to be put in place? Who are the key people that you need to have around? And a lot of times, most of the time, it comes down to clarity. There's just a lack of clarity in people knowing what they're supposed to be doing, what the process is they're supposed to follow. There is no process. We keep winging it every time. Well, that's why there's mistakes. Like there are, and really it's like, again, that goal, you figure out what the goal is. And then we say, for me, at least, it's like, what's the vision for the company? Because a lot of times they think they have one, but typically they don't. What's the mission of the company, right? Who are you trying to serve? What are you trying to accomplish? And then the values, that's like the building blocks of a business, because it's like the second time I talked about values, but when you know your company values, you then, with those three things, you're creating a culture in your company. Yep. And then you know the right people to hire. Because when you hire people that are a good fit for your culture, or not every hire is going to be a great hire, but you want to create that value proposition for the right employees, right? Or, even just for yourself, right? If you're a solopreneur, right? Because you can decide, am I going to grow? Am I going to grow in staff? Am I not? And then just developing those processes, and you don't want to over process things. That's not good, right? It's looking at what are the key components, like you said, Amy, the key things that need to happen in my business to get me there, to move the needle, to hit my goals. Right. Those are the processes you write down. Those are the things you make sure happen daily in your business. Because I believe a lot of times we do things in our business that aren't really necessary, but at some point we were told it was necessary, and then we're still doing it because that's the way we've always done it, right? It's that evaluation piece that typically is missed in a lot of businesses. Yeah. You decide to do something, you plan, you implement, and it just continues on forever instead of saying, did this work? Did this help us reach our goal? So, I mean, we just like did a 180 and talked to them, went back. So here we are.
Yeah. And I think like for all of us, for all of what we do outside of, so obviously Denise and I have this podcast, but between what Denise does with her clients, with what you do with your clients, with what I do with my clients, I think asking that question about success, like what is your definition of success, is a really good question. And I'm actually just sitting here like my wheels are turning, just, trying to formulate how I want to go about like what I want to say next. But in Denise's world, right? Asking her coaching clients, what is their definition of success? What are they looking for out of that next role? I can look at it from a perspective of, for my clients, all my clients come to me, I want to be on social media. Okay, well, what is your ultimate goal, right? What would a successful, usage of social media look like for you? Because a lot of times everybody thinks that that's where they need to be, but there's 6 steps before that we haven't hit, that like we need to discuss prior to utilizing social, right? Because, and then for you,
I think it's like a lot of that thinking work, Stephanie and
yes.
Amy, what you're referring to. It's like not the easy work. It's much easier, quote unquote, to like just keep working in a restaurant, keep serving the meals, right? Keep hiring the employees when they quit. Keep ordering the same from the same supplier, right? Even though it may not be the cheapest, but because it's what I have to do to get going and get revenue in and income in, right? But that thinking work, even with coaching clients too, like my coaching clients, like in career development, it takes time, right? Why do you want to do that? What's your goal? Like, in 5 years, where do you see yourself? Like, so it's not easy, but that, I always tell them it pays off. It can be really productive. It feels like it's not productive, but it can be so productive, I imagine, really, for your businesses. Stephanie, I heard you say so many great things during our time together. I heard like values. I heard like process driven networking. Before we kind of wrap up and conclude here our session, just talking all about how you run your business. What are 3 actionable steps you want to give our listeners in terms of like building their business?
Yeah, so there are a lot, and I knew this question was coming. Gosh. I think one of the things we talked about was this idea of processes and procedures, right?
Mm-hmm.
The things you do over and over again, write those down, and you write them down, even if you're a solopreneur, even if you have a large business. But if you are a solopreneur, you write it down so that it can be followed, each time. But there's going to come a point in time we're going to be able to delegate that if you want, right? If you're wanting to grow. Whether that's an in-person assistant, a virtual assistant, whatever that looks like, then you can hand that task off to someone, or even a social media manager like Amy, right? If she's not utilizing a specific CRM and a client has a client relationship manager, and it has, like mine has social media in it, like scheduling. So if the process is written down, that can be handed off to a marketing company too. Okay, here's your login. And this is how this, and then they don't have to figure out, how do I do this? Right? It's easy.
This is music to Amy's ears.
What tool do you use? What is your CRM?
Maybe we just need to do another podcast, because
there's so much. What, Stephanie, what CRM do you use?
It's a white labeled version of Go High Level.
Go High Level. I haven't heard of that one.
Oh, we're gonna have to talk off podcast.
Part two.
All right. So continue with your actionable steps.
The second would be to create a system that captures leads and allows you to follow up.
Yes.
Capturing leads, an email list, a lead magnet. And this is where you need an Amy to be very strategic, right? A lead magnet, that social media lead magnet. They sign up for an email list. Then you have potential clients at the top of your funnel all the time. That would be the goal, to move people along. And when you hit their need and they're ready for you, you had a new client. But you can't just you can't have a haphazard lack of system. How did that make sense? You got to have a system.
Sure.
It's going to catch up with you, right? I mean,
yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Yeah. You're going to come to a point where, I mean, we've all heard the fortunes and the follow-up, and it's so true. You just, you need to be top of mind for when your potential client is ready for you.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Music
then
to my ears.
I think it's, yes, what I'm here for. I think it's important to connect with your current clients or customers who have purchased from you in the past, and maybe they're not currently a client. But one of the things I believe is the lifetime value of your customers is huge to what you offer as a business owner. And it's like, how many times are they coming back to you to buy? Or if it's more of a, we've set this up and now you're good to go, what does that referral system look like? Because a warm lead is always better than a cold lead, a warm handoff.
For sure.
So find ways to connect with previous customers, clients, and continue to add value, because when they're ready for you again, they're going to come back. So, those would be 3 things. And then kind of going back to that mind work,
the thinking work, like Denise likes to, that's her coin. That's her coin phrase.
Is
We're
it?
gonna copyright. I don't know. Is
thinking work?
It's mailbox and like my candidates, but yes, maybe one
you
day.
know, when we had an episode in our first season called The Dangling Carrot, and both of us were like, oh my God, like that is like genius. And then we Googled and it's like literally a thing. And we were like, what?
We joked. That's just like us to think we create it, but it's literally a well-known term on Google. But anyway.
Lots of pictures in Canva as I was trying to, put something together. Dangling. I'm like, oh my God, this is a thing. I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah. And I mean, but Stephanie, going back to your last point about the follow up with your existing clients, like that, I think to me, I hear relationships with that, right? Those just keeping your relationships warm and, AKA networking, but that's just all about keeping that value, but also just being top of mind. So thank you. Those are great.
Hold on, I have one more.
Okay.
A bonus.
Bonus. How many of us in life life, business, whatever, right? We get frustrated, we get down, we hit roads, right? The road in this life, there are highs and there are lows. And I believe that when we identify our why, it helps us to stay the course.
Yep.
And I think we always have 2 whys when we're doing something. We have our selfish why and our altruistic why. And when we can identify what both of those are, and hey, again, it's okay to be selfish, right? Like in business, if you, like for me, my selfish why is I wanted to set my own schedule. I wanted to do something that was fulfilling. And I wanted to be able to make the income I wanted to make, right? There's a ceiling in when you have a traditional job, which is totally fine, right? Everyone's got to lean into what works for them. But then my altruistic why is I genuinely love helping people, because we don't know what we don't know until we know it.
Right.
And so for me, business wise, when it gets hard and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? I should just go find a job. I remember, right? I go back to my whys. I have them written down and I revisit that. And I say, is this why still strong enough for me to keep doing what I'm doing? If the answer is yes, keep doing it. And if the answer is no, I ask why and tweak it. And I think that applies to everything, right? Everything we do in life, you can have both of those. So there's your bonus. There's your bonus.
We like it.
It's also your therapy session for the week. We also are talk therapists. Oh my gosh, that was really good. I'm telling you, my wheels are spinning in my head. Okay, so I feel like we need to like set a part 2. I don't know. There's so much, guys. There's so much, but we want to thank you so much, Stephanie, for meeting us at our mailbox and listening in, our listeners on another episode. And again, our guest, Stephanie German, mother of 3, best-selling author, professor, executive strategist, and owner of German Business Consulting. It was so fun for Denise and I to connect with such a dynamic author and business owner, and local Fresniite. Is that what you call yourself?
No idea. Sure. We're going to coin that.
Yeah.
All right. So, Stephanie, where can our Fresnins?
We don't say Fresno. We say Fres yes when you want to come. It's a good marketing campaign back in the 80s.
There you go. Where can our listeners find you, Stephanie?
Yeah. So I try to make it super easy. StephanieGerman.com. On social media, it's LinkedIn /Stephanie German. Same with Instagram, and Facebook. So you can find all 3 business pages, just / or /. I don't know. Whatever. A slash with Stephanie German at the end. So thank you so much for having me. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's very fun. And that's a wrap for this week. In season 2, our goal is to share actionable tips with you. We hope this podcast episode leaves you feeling encouraged and full of midlife energy. But don't go away yet. Be sure to check out our show notes. And while you're there, click to join our email list. We promise we will send only meaningful content. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram too, for the show at Midlife at the Mailbox, or our individual accounts for our own tips and tricks at Amy L. Alex 28 and Denise Rabat. That's Denise with a Y. Thanks, Mom. So that we can come into your inbox each week and your feed almost daily.
If you're a seasoned listener or just found us, we're glad you did. Make sure that you are following our show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you hear, please share our episode with your midlife bestie and leave us a 5-star review so more awesome listeners like you can discover Midlife at the Mailbox. We release new episodes every other week on Thursdays. At least we try. Our podcast is a production from the minds of 2 midlife besties and produced with love by the very creative Amy Alexander and Denise Rabat. Professional video and audio editing by Hivecast. See you at the Mailbox.
Bye.